Welcome back to CLIC Connect. I'm your host, Craig. This is part 2 of our episode with Jason Riederer of the American Hotel and Lodging Association. And we're talking about legislative matters throughout California, both on the state and local levels. There's nobody better to talk to. He is in the trenches for us every day. Jason, welcome back to the show, my friend. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Jason.
Craig. Hello there. Thank you for having me, Craig.
It's good to have you back, my friend, and I appreciate you making the time to do 2 episodes for us today.
Absolutely.
Let's get right into it, my friend. What's happening legislatively? Where do you want to start? Pick a city, or do you want to start in Sacramento and go start with the state issues?
Let's start with Sacramento. So
okay.
I will say probably the most important legislation that came out of this last session affecting the hotel industry was probably the resort fee transparency legislation. So this is an issue where there were actually 3 different competing bills. One actually was spurred by the Attorney General, Bonta, and worked with some state legislators to introduce a bill there. And then there were 2 other additional members that introduced bills, one in the Assembly and one in the Senate. So there were 3 different competing bills on the same issue. And I'll kind of gloss over what kind of happened, but essentially 2 different bills ended up being signed into law by Governor Newsom. One affects all industries. So if you are advertising a certain product or good in California, such as tickets on Ticketmaster or advertising a hotel in our situation, those taxes and any sort of fees need to be made aware up front before someone actually books their reservation. And so that is a monumental change in the advertising of hotel rooms, which you may have seen President Biden talking about during his address before the State of the Union last year. He's continued to talk about it and is working through different departments to try and enact that at the national level. But California, as California does many times, was first to enact a law affecting that for everyone. And the second bill that was also signed into law was specific to the hotel industry. And that also required fees to be made upfront in the advertised pricing for all hotels. Now, any sort of government taxes also need to be included before the hotel guest makes their reservation, but it doesn't have to be included in that first initial pricing. So 2 big bills that are going to be becoming law next year. So you have a little bit of time to prepare for that. But certainly a monumental change in the advertising of hotel fees and pricing.
Glenn Hausman and I have been screaming about resort fees and urban destination charges for years. I get it, being in a management company, being, on the ownership side, I get it. But I've always disagreed with it unless it was a true destination resort. Here something like that, I get it. I could get it at a Four Seasons in San Francisco, let's say. Or one of my favorites, the Fairmont up there. Okay. Yeah, I understand it. You've got 2.5 workers for every 1 guest and blah, blah, blah. I get it.
Correct. And according to our polling, only 6% of all hotels actually have some sort of resort fee included. Yeah. So on the national scale, it's a minimal effect, but for the ones that do, they'll certainly need to change how their advertising happens. And many of the larger brands on their websites already, you can have a toggle switch to include that. So yeah, for some of them, they're already working to enact this, but this just speeds up that transition.
I'm really surprised the brands didn't do more about this when this first started becoming a thing. They're going, wait a minute, we're not getting our taste on that.
Well, if you remember, this whole issue pretty much came to light during, I think everyone was buying Taylor Swift tickets around the country, and that got the attention of Congress. And the president, and then all sorts of different industries got looped in, including the hotel industry. So
Yeah.
I don't think it was initially an assault on us, but we just got looped into it. And anyways, the airlines did as well, and many other large industries.
Well, yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, booking on Southwest, and I got the $49 rate on the way out, but it was $600 on the way back. It's like, wait a minute, no, we're not doing this. If I'm going to do that, I might as well go, and have a reserved seat in first class someplace for a half-hour flight. So, oh gosh, that's amazing. That okay, and I think that's a positive. I think that's something that helps with our reputation with the traveling public, and certainly with the business traveler. They're looking at what they're spending. Okay, they're looking at, we're going into a year of chaos with a presidential election and governors and AGs and everything else across the country, and they're not going to be spending what they were. That's going to take a hit. So
absolutely,
I think that's a good thing.
So I think we will certainly see some sort of either a rule at the department level nationally, or some sort of presidential action on this, to probably take somewhat of what California enacted into law and make it make it national policy across the board. So we'll see how that plays out. Our federal team at AHLA is certainly watching that whole issue closely. But if any members or anyone has any issues on, or any questions on the enactment of this policy, please feel free to reach out to AHLA, and we'll be happy to help put you in contact with either our team or someone who can answer those questions for you.
Perfect. I love it. Is there anything on the horizon for the next legislative session that is turning your hair gray?
In California, always. One thing that has not been introduced yet that we certainly are watching closely, and it happened to the fast food industry this year, but this proposal of having government-appointed council members to appoint different labor and wage mandates for industries. So the hotel industry wasn't included in the bill that passed 2 sessions ago and was further addressed last session, but it further affected the fast food industry, essentially creating a minimum wage and, like I said, an appointee by the governor's office to regulate how those wage floors for the industry are developed and regulated. So that's certainly something that keeps me up at night. Hopefully that doesn't happen to our industry. I think hotels, and through their current collective bargaining agreements for the unionized hotels, or the private ones, do a great job at working with their own employees to manage their workforce. But when you involve the government, in addition to that, it makes everything very complicated, and something we certainly do not want to see happen to our industry there.
Absolutely. It's, I don't know how much of the public really knows, but you've got a minimum of 3,000, 3,500 bills that go through the system basically every year in Sacramento. Something that's actually productive and good to the absolutely absurd, and everything in between. What's it like for you and your team trying to keep your eyes on all these moving parts,
so you have
every year?
Tens of thousands of bills introduced in various legislatures from across the country. So luckily, our team of about 8 people on HLA's state and local government affairs team has split up the nation into different regions. I manage multiple states, oversee 13 states with a colleague of mine based in Denver. But it is a lot. It is a lot. Yeah. Hawaii, for example, introduces the most hotel-specific legislation in the country. Their whole economy is purely based on the hotel industry and travel and tourism, as one would expect.
And the military, those are the two.
Absolutely. Likewise, California has an enormous tourism economy, and every once in a while there is hotel-specific bills that pop up. more of the policy is coming out at the local level, specifically addressing hotels, but there certainly is quite a bit at the legislature level for statewide policy. And then you have the non-hotel specific bills that still largely play into affecting our industry. So for instance, there was a climate transparency reporting bill that was passed last session, and it applies to any company that brings in over $1 billion in revenue annually that does business in California. So you got to think, I mean, that is substantial, not just for California-based businesses, but if you do business in California. Yeah. And so what it would say, and it's a significant bill. California, again, was the first to enact it, but you have to report your greenhouse gas emissions every year to the state of California. And not only that, but 2 years down the road, you're going to have to submit the emissions of your products and for commutes of your employees.
Right.
And you know, the amount of emissions created by the end users of your products, things that are very hard to manage right now. But it's a priority of Governor Newsom to enact this type of policy, that it's probably going to be looked at, you know, at the national level. The SEC already tried to do something like this before, and it was shot down. Yeah. But it is monumental legislation that will certainly affect our major brands, major REITs, large companies that all do business in California.
Well, let's just look at sports and entertainment. Okay. You know, what are the Rams going to report? What are the Chargers going to report? What's Warner Brothers, Universal, you know, NBC, you know, Paramount, the rest of them? I mean, you know, they've got theme parks, you've got sports and entertainment, you know, venues, and it goes on and on. You know, it's like, okay, you know,
how you measure that is, you know, it's far above my expertise, but it is going to be a substantial undertaking for many corporations.
Yeah. I mean, you're adding another layer that is, you know, and you're creating another whole cottage industry, you know, that's going to end up being big business at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I mean, it's you know, those are the things that keep me up at night. You know, what are they trying to do? I mean, we've got a gasoline tax and fees coming in. I think it's the first of the year in California. It's another $1.12, you know, on top of what we're already paying. And if I hear the term summer blend again, I'm going to lose my mind. Okay. It's just another reason to up the gas fees. But yeah, you know, it just seems to me that there's got to be a little bit of common sense with some of this stuff.
And in some places there was a ballot initiative, again, initiated by Unite here in the city of Anaheim. And it would have enacted a $25 an hour hotel worker minimum wage, which some may be watching and saying, well, you know, many hoteliers already pay that kind of competitive wage, so that's not a big deal. But also included in that ordinance would have said, if you're a hotel worker cleans above a certain square footage, you need to pay them double the rate of pay. And they brought that, you know, that square footage limitation down substantially. Yeah. And also there is a, you know, growth that, you know, it's going to increase potentially in the future as well. So you're talking about $50 an hour. And in LA, they were considering proposals maybe to increase it, you know, to a $30 an hour minimum wage that could have potentially been 60 in certain workload situations. So in Anaheim specifically, luckily, our state and local partners there in AHLA all coalesced together and launched a major campaign. It was called No on Measure A. A lot of local hoteliers there all worked together to defeat that ballot measure. That was a substantial victory for us there. Certainly would have been bad to the tourism economy. As everyone knows, you know, Disney's there. There's so many different theaters and sporting event venues. And also in addition to the hotel industry, this ballot initiative applied to event center workers.
There you
So,
go.
which
Yeah.
many of those event centers are owned by the city. So
Right.
that was an interesting dynamic that you don't see in many different cities, where the city is like, oh no, if we enact this, we're going to have to pay these higher prices.
Yeah.
So luckily, the voters in Anaheim recognized that, this situation, this policy was just too detrimental to their tourism economy, and they voted it down. So we were happy to see that outcome take place. But we are fighting so many different initiatives all throughout Southern California that are trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, and it's it's again, thank you for all your hard work, and I don't know how you and your team keep up with this. I really don't, but you're definitely appreciated at CLIC Connect and the California Lodging Investment Conference. You were a big hit this year there and delivered just a great lunchtime keynote. And we're looking forward to having you back next year as well. I hate to pick on Los Angeles, the city of LA. I really do. But they passed a mansion tax, and my opinion wasn't written very well, because even if you've got a commercial piece of property over that $5 million and above threshold, you're going to be subject to that. The cities have their own documentary transfer tax when you have a sale. Besides the county tax at $1.10, I think City of LA was at $4.40 per thousand, where the county was at $1.10, and now there's a mansion tax for $5 million and above. Now, I don't know if this has changed, but the last time I checked, there was only one hotel that traded hands since this tax came into effect, and they didn't have to pay the tax because it was being converted to a homeless shelter.
Correct. That's my understanding as well. The only hotel to trade hands in LA in the last year was purchased by the city for homeless housing.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't just scream bad policies being enacted, that's what's happening. And it's very scary because California had such a vibrant tourism economy and so many hotels always changing hands. But the policies being enacted are certainly making it to folks are looking to other markets, other states. Where are areas where they have a great tourism economy, such as Arizona or Florida, where we don't have these high taxes, and it's better for profitability.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, the problem with Arizona, two of them actually. Desert. Okay, so everything's a mirage. It's 3,000 degrees in the summertime. That's one. The other one is there's still an overabundance of old product that should have come out of the market decades ago.
I still agree. That's what Los Angeles and the greater Southern California area have working for it. You have the most beautiful coastline and beaches, and that's why the hoteliers continue to do what they do in Los Angeles and try to continue to make it work there. But there's certain city councils that are certainly more willing to work with us than others, and there just needs to be a common courtesy of, hey, if you're going to address this hotel, you're going to enact new hotel policy, please work with your stakeholders in the local community, so you're not further burdening them so they can't run their business. And most of the time we can work with these city councils. Some, unfortunately, we can't. They enact their policy without doing any sort of economic analysis, and it hurts the economy, and then those hotels leave. So it's just an example of what happens.
Sadly, and absolutely, right on target with that statement, my friend. It is sad, and tourism is such a huge economic engine, but you've got to approach it with some common sense. You've got to make it easier to develop. Development is key. Growth is key. And you've got to be able to make the real estate transaction as easy as possible. Okay, there's a lot of moving parts to that, and it's if you're throwing in all these taxes on top of everything else, it's just like, wait a minute, it's now we got a city up in Northern California that I think was the culprit that started this city-only documentary transfer tax every time there was a sale, and it actually cratered a deal that I worked on. It was like all of a sudden another $60,000-$70,000. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Now this is a long time ago, but yeah. See, this is why I like, the mayor up in San Francisco, and I like Mayor Bass as well. I think they get it. I think, they've got tremendous jobs, just like every city council does as well. But I think that they've got a little bit better understanding of what hotels, travel, and tourism means to a city.
Absolutely.
And I think if we can get that message out, we're all in a better place.
Absolutely. And having had multiple conversations with Mayor Bass and, in other cities like San Francisco, I mean, they certainly do understand the impact of their tourism economy, and they want to make it work for us and all parties involved. So very fortunate to have that. But yeah, as you're saying, in Santa Monica, and this is certainly something, I've talked with the mayor there as well. But there has been ballot initiatives, again, not proposed by city council, but proposed by local 11. And it's a process where it has to be voted on by city council. But if they vote it down, if they oppose it, then it just goes out to the ballot. But there's a couple different initiatives, but one is a 7% nightly room tax. And that is something that has been publicly reported on. That is a collective bargaining agreement demand from local 11. So what they can't get through their collective bargaining agreements, they go to and introduce as its own ordinance. So this additional 7% tax on nightly room rates would go to create a affordable housing program to benefit workers. Which, for the union members sounds great. If you're not a union member, you don't get that. But the hotel community and guests certainly don't want another 7% tacked on to every single night. No. They'll just go to a town next door. They just won't come to Santa Monica anymore. Santa Monica will have priced itself out, and that's the type of policy that it's just not the thought process involved. I think, in my personal opinion, I think the union needs to understand that, it's very easy for a guest just to go to a town next door where these policies don't apply, and they'll do that
in a heartbeat, and, okay, let's use the west side of Los Angeles to Santa Monica. Very easy to get an Uber, very easy to get a cab. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you go to the city next door and you're going to a function where probably shouldn't be driving afterwards anyhow because they're having a reception, hey, I just saved $300 on a 2.5 night stay, and I don't have to pay for parking, $50 a night for my car, and the Uber ride's going to be a lot cheaper, and I saved all that tax money. And all of a sudden my company's looking at me like, hey, he knows how to travel, he saves us money. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I don't think city councils want to be in the position of, being the in between hotels and their workers. I think they want the collective bargaining process to play out for unionized hotels or, for the private hoteliers to be able to negotiate on their own terms. It's a process that's been in place for so long already. And once you start getting government involved in those details, it becomes so complicated and you end up with so much policy that just doesn't work. For instance, in Los Angeles, on that ballot initiative or compromise ordinance that's working its way through the process, while there are positions like a new police permitting provision, it's not spelled out in the ordinance how that is going to work. So luckily for us, Council President Krikorian has said, he wants to work with the hotel community and others on developing that process. So it does work for all stakeholders involved. And we're very pleased at the opportunity to have a chance to affect how that new provision gets enacted. So it's great when you have that opportunity. That's not always the case. But anytime we can make something work for the business community, we will take full advantage.
Absolutely. Jason, we are out of time. thank you so much for rejoining the conversation and giving the audience and myself and producer Dani such great information. I really appreciate it. You've got an open invitation to come back anytime, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Craig. It was a pleasure.
You have a good one.
You too.
Thank you for joining us. Leave your comments below. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, ring that bell for updates. 2 very important episodes. I want to thank Jason for spending so much time with us. He's just a tremendous individual and a champion for the hospitality industry, and it's just a pleasure having him on the show. Producer Dani did it again. She produced 2 great shows. She always does. She never lets us down. She takes care of us. If you would like to be a production partner or be on the show, DM us. Producer Dani and I both look at all the messages, so please feel free to contact us. And I do want to thank our good friends at Red Roof Franchising for bringing you this episode. Without them, without you, Dani and I would be unemployed. What can I say? So thank you, Red Roof. Call Matt Hostetler over there. Let him know that Producer Dani and I sent you. They're a great alternative. And I want to thank you again. And on March 6th and 7th, 2024, the 7th Annual California Lodging Investment Conference, the West and South Coast Plaza. You can register at CLIconference.com. Join us. If you're in the California hotel market or want to be, this is the one event you should attend. Personal development, networking, lots of networking and education. Meet Jason there as well. He's a good person for you guys all to get to know. So remember to be kind, share your knowledge. Now go be amazing.